It's been the fastest growing division of espionage that our federal government has been working on the last 15 years. James Clapper has been at the forefront of geospatial intelligence. What do they do with that? They look at your activity, activity-based intelligence. They map that geographically, and that's their human domain analytics. Put that together, and they give the speeches at these geospatial intelligence conferences talking about mastering the human domain before they used it as a subtitle for that. That's what it's really about. It's about the data, and the data is the tool for military control. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Monday, May 23rd, 2016. In the next segment, we're going to be talking to the author of a fiction book called Texas Shrugged, as in Atlas Shrugged, but about Texas independence. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think it'll be a fun conversation. I want to talk about what's going on in California. There is a sweep of 11 fast-tracked anti-gun bills coming up in California. Guns.com has called it the gun-pocalypse. I'll tell you what's going to be happening. They're also going to talk about Tom Brokaw coming after guns at a commencement address at the University of Mississippi in just a moment. Before we do, I want to let you know that we have a sale that we've extended for Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, 20% off. That's 20% off our Nascent Iodine, Survival Shield X2 at InfoWarsLife.com for limited time only. There's no question we've reached a tipping point on a global scale now more than ever. It's time to prepare your family with things like water, food, heirloom seeds, and our flagship formula, Survival Shield X2, Nascent Iodine. So for limited time, we have 20% off of that. Also, if you want to sign up for our free InfoWars newsletter at InfoWars.com/newsletter, you will get not only 50% off Hillary for Prison t-shirts and Come and Take It t-shirts, but you will also get specials sent to you on an ongoing basis, as well as unique content that only comes out on the InfoWars newsletter. Again, that's a free email newsletter. If you sign up for that, you'll get 50% off our two best-selling t-shirts, Hillary for Prison t-shirt and the Come and Take It t-shirt. You can do that at InfoWars.com/newsletter, and you'll see these promo codes that you can use to sign up for that. All right, now what's going on in California? We've got a situation here where you've got a couple of Democrats, one who is the president pro tem of the Senate, another one who is a lieutenant governor, who both want to run for governor. They're competing with each other to see who can do the most abridgment of our fundamental rights to protect ourselves in California. And this has been called, these are 11 different gun regulations, as Guns.com has called it, the gun-pocalypse. They say that they all passed the Senate last week, and they're now going to be coming up to the General Assembly. Now, Firearms Policy Coalition says it is nothing short of unconscionable that millions of law-abiding Californians are being used as chess pieces in a twisted political game to see who can race to the bottom first. And let me give you an example of what some of these regulations are. They say the measures include things like restrictions, mandatory registration on ghost guns, retroactive bans on currently grandfathered firearms and magazines going back to 1899. So all of your classic guns are going to get everything, folks. Outlawing the use of bullet buttons. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. I had to look that up. Founding a state-run firearm violence research center to study gun deaths and to generate lies about gun statistics. As a healthcare issue, they'll mark all gun theft a felony offense. They'll criminalize loans of guns between friends and requiring the reporting of stolen guns. Finally, 3 bills in the package would change how California defines ammunition, and they would mandate background checks for ammunition purchases, as well as collect and save sales tax information. So, folks, in California, you're about to lose every single bit of your gun rights by infringement. And when we look at things like bullet buttons, I had to look this up, and it's like, what is this? California put regulations in to make it difficult to remove spent magazines. You know, you have interchangeable magazines and things like AR-15s. You can't pull those things out and put another one in unless you've got a special tool. So people came up with these bullet buttons as a workaround. And I've got to say that if you think that you're going to regulate this stuff out of business, wait until you do full gun prohibition in California and the rest of the United States. If Hillary wins, if these people in California win, and you go into full gun prohibition, you're going to see not things as simple as bullet buttons. You're going to see an explosion in technology. That always happens. It happened with alcohol. It happened with the prohibition of all kinds of drugs. You get more virulent forms of whatever it is that you don't like, that you think is too dangerous for people to have. So you wind up with things like meth, or you wind up with things like bathtub gin, or you change the consumption from primarily being beer before alcohol prohibition to hard liquor. You're going to get more of what you don't like. You're going to get it in a totally unregulated Wild West scenario. So you want to do this? Bring it on, folks. You're going to see something really ramp up here, but it's going to be very violent on our streets because right now people are shooting each other over drug prohibition. That's where most of this crime is happening. Wait until the weapons themselves start to become an object of innovation. Then we have Tom Brokaw. These type of people used to be the only sources of news. Let's play this clip from Tom Brokaw. Wait, let's wait until we come back from a break. You won't believe what he has to say. He says, more guns, more firearm tolerance will mean more homegrown acts of terror. That's it. If you own a gun, you're a terrorist, according to the guy who used to be 1/3 of the news nationwide, Tom Brokaw. We'll play that clip for you when we come back. You won't believe it. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're going to be talking to the author of Texas Shrugged, Matt McKinley, in just a moment. Before we do, I want to play this clip from Tom Brokaw. As I point out, remember, this is the guy who used to have, what do you call it? You got a monopoly, you got a duopoly. What do you have it call it when you got 3 networks that control all your information? I guess you can call it tri-tyranny or something. I don't know. But let's listen to the guy who used to be one of the big 3 newscasters talk about guns at the University of Missouri commencement address. And, of course, they've now become political platforms for people like this to pontificate about their liberal views. Listen to what he has to say about firearms.
I'm active in sports shooting, but I'm appalled by the determination of organizations and individuals to arm more people without any appreciation of the consequence of ever more lethal weapons in our midst. More guns and more firearm tolerance will mean more homegrown acts of terror. Yes, we have a constitutional right to own guns. I believe strongly in the Second Amendment. But with that right comes the personal obligation to be on guard against the promiscuous use of guns, not to pretend that no limits means no trouble.
There you go. We have to guard against the promiscuous use of guns. If you carry a gun openly and you're not wearing a uniform, that is promiscuous, it's dangerous. No matter what our government does, no matter how much the federal government militarizes and federalizes our police, that's not a problem for people like Tom Brokaw because, you know, you and I can use it for sports. It's for hunting. It's not as a check against government abuse of power. No, the Second Amendment says that's what it truly is about. And what he wants to do is he wants to change your rights. He says, oh, I agree with the Second Amendment rights. No, he wants to change your rights into a government-granted privilege. And all we have to do is look at what's happening in California. They are prescribing that to the extent that they're essentially shutting it down. They don't want anybody but the government to own guns, and we know where that leads. He says, it said in 2013, it was a far-reaching claim for gun owners to say that firearms are necessary for protection against a tyrannical government. Well, he has an argument with the founders of this country. He has an argument with history, because we can show you over and over again the first move of tyrants is to confiscate the guns. And when I look at the ridiculous issues that are being brought up in these commencement addresses, I saw this story from back in North Carolina, close to where we used to live. North Carolina high schools in Wake County are now getting rid of the idea that you would have a valedictorian and a salutatorian. Okay, those aren't inclusive enough. So we don't want to have any kind of meritocracy in America. No, we have to get rid of that. We have to dumb everybody down. We have to have not only a common core, but we have to have common results. This is a unanimous decision from the school board there in Wake County to not honor the people who are the first and second in their class in terms of grades. Because, you know, this is like Wobegon, where all the kids are above average. Disgusting. All right. Now, I've given you a lot of reasons why we need to get out of the federal government. We need to stop their control, their social engineering of everything that's going on in our country. We talked about this last week. We talked about the 8 reasons that Boris Johnson, mayor of London, gave for Britain to leave the EU. Every one of those reasons is intensified in the case of Texas, for example. He said, oh, they're giving us 2,500 regulations a year. We get 80,000 pages of regulations a year from the federal bureaucracy as American citizens. Everything that happens in Britain in terms of the net amount of money that they send into the European Union is greater when you look at what happens with Texas, for example. We would be better off. We would have that money to spend for ourselves. We would set up what our priorities are. And I think it's interesting when we look at the pushback that some of the liberal media has come out with. We saw this back in 2012. The Dallas Morning News said Texas can no longer complain that it gives more than it gets from the federal government. And they say, well, that was true for decades, that Texas received only 90 cents or less for every dollar that residents and businesses sent to Washington. But that's no longer the case. Why is that no longer the case? Well, demographic shifts and a surge in military spending in Texas had us cross the break-even line, according to them. Well, I have figures that show otherwise, but nevertheless, is that really a reason to stay in? See, what's happening with that demographic shift is the open borders. They're bringing in people, they're putting them on the welfare rolls, and they're paying them more on the welfare rolls than they pay our retired citizens who have paid into Social Security their entire working life. 15%, 15.62%. of their gross wages go into Social Security. Yet those people are getting thousands of dollars less per year than people who are on welfare. And the government is bringing them in, mandating that we have absolutely no control over our borders, telling us what benefits have to be given to people, dictating that, and then saying, but look at how much money we're giving you. That's the way they blackmail us. And of course, the more the federal government puts in terms of TSA agents or BLM agents, well, that's a benefit. Look, we're creating jobs in Texas. They've created swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. And then they say that is a net economic benefit for us. I don't think so. So we're talking to our author here who has a book called Texas Shrugged. Has a great cover. It looks like the cover that you typically see of Atlas Shrugged, except the guy in gold is not holding up the world. He's holding up the United States. He's got a cowboy hat. He's got cowboy boots on, and his shoulder is right there where Texas is. Clear analogy to that. He's author of several books, Texas Shrugged, Quantum of Conscience. He says it's not political, but it's about time travel. Also another book called The Right Can't Win. We'll talk to him about that as well. The premise of the book, Texas Shrugged, according to the summary here, is even today, certain heirs of the Founding Fathers carry secret instructions passed down through the generations. The heir of George Washington combines the governor of Texas to restore the Constitution by peacefully seceding from the United States. Of course, Obama reacts unfavorably. Is peaceful succession possible? Yes. And he says it's the only way to win. So joining us now is Matt McKinley. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here.
Great premise for your book. Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Just like you said, it is Texas secession. It's fiction. However, it's a peaceful secession. And people say to me, well, how's that possible? And I said, well, think it through. What are you going to take up daggers and knives and pitchforks and torches and your shotguns and storm across the Oklahoma border? Impossible. The only way to do it, and I had to figure this out to make the book, of course, believable. I war-gamed how this would happen, if it really would ever happen, is you would have to do it peacefully. You would have to basically do a flash mob, for example, where 4 or 5 million people stand up all at once and say, we've had enough. We've had enough of this system. We've had enough of the never-ending money printing, the QE, the never-ending debt, laws, rules, regulations, ordinance, executive orders. We've had enough. So in the book, an heir of the Founding Fathers, in this case George Washington, a descendant of George Washington, in the book, the premise is they do exist. There are reasons why these people stay in the shadows, and we could debate that some other time, but that person combines with a fictitious governor of Texas. They go before the Alamo, and they announce to the world, we are out of this government. Of course, they play it up that there's going to be a big announcement, but nobody really knows what's coming. I think in the book, Obama is playing a game of pool, and the governor of Texas announces secession. He said, what did he say? The governor's name is Joe Tanner in the book.
That's great. You know, when I look at this, you talk about how it might be a flash mob or something like that. I suggested that perhaps as Britain is having an election, they call it the Brexit, to see whether or not they should leave the European Union, we ought to try to have some kind of a referendum like that to see whether or not Texas should leave the Union. I know that the Republican establishment would not like that because they very much like to be players in Washington, don't they?
Yeah, I don't think there is really two parties anymore. I mean,
No.
they're taking their cloaks off.